The forced marriage was supposed to be simple, a transaction sealed with vows neither meant. But Amara Chukwuma is no longer the terrified woman bound in a warehouse, and Do-Hyun Kang is no longer the cold monster who claimed her as payment for her brother's sins. At a dinner with Seoul's deadliest clan leaders, threats emerge from the shadows. Someone wants Amara dead. Someone believes the Don's foreign wife is his weakness. Do-Hyun will burn the city to ashes before he lets anyone touch what's his. But as enemies attack and forced proximity ignites into something darker, more consuming, a devastating truth waits to destroy them both. Because the past never stays buried. And when Amara discovers the real reason Do-Hyun married her, when she learns the terrible secret connecting their families, she'll have to choose between the love that saved her and the truth that could destroy everything. This is war. This is obsession. This is a reckoning. Betrayal, bullets, and a love that refuses to die even when it should. Subscribe now and turn on notifications because this conclusion will leave you breathless. Comment your predictions. Will their love survive the truth? Hit that like button and let's finish this war. The blood debt comes due. Let's go. Mrs. Han arrived at 7 the next morning with 3 assistants carrying garment bags and makeup cases. Amara had barely slept, her mind replaying the dinner conversation with Do-Hyun, his threats veiled as promises, her brother's face a constant ghost behind her eyelids. "Good morning, Mrs. Kang." Mrs. Han's professional smile was already in place. "We have much to prepare for tonight's dinner. The gathered clan leaders will be watching you very closely. First impressions in this world can mean the difference between respect and vulnerability." Amara sat at the vanity while the team worked, transforming her into something that belonged in Do-Hyun's world. The dress they'd chosen was stunning, midnight blue silk that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor, with a neckline that was elegant without being provocative. Jewelry that probably cost more than most people earned in a year. Hair styled in an intricate updo that somehow looked effortless. "You look like a queen," one of the assistants whispered, genuine admiration in her voice. A queen in a gilded cage, Amara thought but didn't say. She studied her reflection and barely recognized herself. Maybe that was the point. Maybe Do-Hyun needed her to be someone else entirely, someone who fit into his brutal world without question. "One more thing," Mrs. Han said, producing a small box. Inside was a ring, a massive diamond surrounded by sapphires, clearly designed to match the dress. Do-Hyun SSI selected this personally. He said you'd need it for tonight. Amara stared at the ring as Mrs. Han slipped it onto her finger. It was beautiful and heavy and felt like another chain binding her to a man who saw her as property. Do-Hyun was waiting in the foyer when she descended the stairs, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw his mask slip. His eyes traveled over her slowly, something dark and possessive flashing in their depths before he caught himself. When their eyes met, his expression had returned to its usual cold indifference. "You'll do," he said, which was probably the closest thing to a compliment she'd get from him. He was wearing a black suit that looked custom-made, his hair styled perfectly, every inch the powerful Don. He extended his arm. "Shall we?" Amara took his arm, because refusing would be pointless. The car waiting outside was different from the Mercedes. This was a Rolls-Royce, because apparently they needed to arrive in style. The drive to the venue took 20 minutes, Do-Hyun spending the entire time on his phone, speaking in rapid Korean that was too fast for Amara to follow. The restaurant was in a private wing of one of Seoul's most exclusive hotels. As they walked in, every head turned. Amara felt the weight of dozens of eyes assessing her, judging her, trying to figure out what she was doing with Do-Hyun Kang. She kept her spine straight, her expression calm, channeling every ounce of strength she had left. "Smile," Do-Hyun murmured in her ear, his hand settling possessively on her lower back. "You're supposed to be madly in love with me, remember?" Amara turned to him and smiled, but there was steel in her eyes. "Of course, darling. How could I forget?" Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or intrigue. His hand pressed more firmly against her back as he guided her into the private dining room where the other guests were already gathered. The introductions were a blur of names and faces. There was Kim Jae-won, Do-Hyun's cousin and second in command, a man with sharp eyes and a smile that never reached them. Park Min-jun, head of a rival clan who'd apparently agreed to a truce. Lee Sung-ho, an older man who controlled most of the gambling operations in Busan. And their wives or girlfriends, women who looked at Amara like she was either a threat or an amusing novelty. "So?" Jae-won said as they took their seats, his eyes fixed on Amara with uncomfortable intensity. "The mysterious bride. Do-Hyun has been very secretive about you. Tell us, Mrs. Kang, how did you two meet?" It was a trap, Amara realized. Everyone at this table knew Do-Hyun didn't do romance. They were waiting for her to stumble, to reveal the truth of their arrangement. At a business function, Amara said smoothly, taking a sip of wine, "I was working as a translator." He was impossible to ignore, all that intensity in a room full of people pretending to be civilized. She turned to Do-Hyun with a look that could have been mistaken for affection if you didn't know better. "You certainly made an impression." Do-Hyun's hand found hers under the table, his grip just short of painful a warning. But when he spoke, his voice was warm. Amara has a way of seeing through pretense. It's refreshing in a world where everyone wears masks. The irony of him saying that while they both wore the biggest masks of all wasn't lost on Amara. The dinner progressed through multiple courses, conversation flowing around topics Amara barely understood. Territory disputes, shipping routes, political connections. She played her part perfectly, laughing at appropriate moments, asking intelligent questions that made her seem interested but not intrusive, letting Do-Hyun's hand rest possessively on her thigh as if she welcomed it. It was exhausting. Halfway through the meal, she excused herself to the restroom, needing a moment to breathe. The bathroom was as opulent as the rest of the venue, all marble and gold fixtures. Amara gripped the edge of the sink and stared at her reflection, trying to remember who she'd been before all this. The door opened, and one of the wives entered, Park Min-jun's girlfriend, a woman named Soo-jin with cat-like eyes and a predatory smile. "You're good," Soo-jin said, reapplying her lipstick. "Almost convincing. But we all know Do-Hyun doesn't do love. So what are you really? Debt payment, political arrangement, a particularly interesting acquisition." Amara turned to face her, keeping her expression neutral. "Does it matter?" "It matters because some people think you make him weak." Soo-jin's smile sharpened. "A foreign wife with no connections, no power, no protection of her own. You're a vulnerability. And in our world, vulnerabilities get exploited." "Is that a threat?" "It's advice." Soo-jin moved toward the door, then paused. "Watch your back, Mrs. Kang. Not everyone at that table wants you to survive the night." She left, and Amara stood frozen, her heart pounding. This was the danger Mrs. Han had tried to warn her about. She wasn't just Do-Hyun's wife, she was a target, a weakness in his armor that his enemies would try to exploit. When she returned to the table, Do-Hyun's eyes immediately found hers, and she saw the question there. She gave a slight shake of her head, not here, not now. His jaw tightened, but he nodded, understanding. The rest of the dinner passed without incident, but Amara felt the tension coiling tighter with each passing moment. When they finally left, Do-Hyun's hand was like iron on her elbow, practically dragging her to the car. Once inside, he turned to her, his expression thunderous. "What happened in that bathroom?" Amara told him, watching his face grow progressively darker with each word. When she finished, silence filled the car like a living thing. "Park's girlfriend," Do-Hyun finally said, his voice deadly quiet. "She had no right to speak to you." "I'll handle it." "Handle it how?" Amara demanded. "By doing something that proves I am a vulnerability, that you'll go to war over a wife you don't even want. You're mine." The words came out harsh, possessive, and Do-Hyun looked almost surprised he'd said them. "Whether I wanted you or not is irrelevant. You wear my ring, you carry my name, and anyone who threatens you threatens me. That won't be tolerated." "I'm not yours," Amara said for what felt like the 100th time. "I'm trapped in a marriage I didn't choose, playing a role to keep my brother alive. But I don't belong to you, Do-Hyun." He moved so fast she didn't have time to react. One moment they were sitting on opposite sides of the car, the next he'd closed the distance, his hand cupping her jaw, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You can tell yourself that as many times as you want," he said, his face inches from hers. "But we both know the truth. You became mine the moment you signed those papers, the moment you walked into my house, the moment you put on that ring." His thumb brushed across her lower lip. "You can hate it. You can fight it, but you can't change it. Then he released her and moved back to his side of the car, leaving Amara shaking with anger and something else she refused to name. When they arrived back at the mansion, Do-Hyun disappeared into his office without another word. Amara went to her room, stripped off the beautiful dress and the heavy jewelry, and stood under the shower until the water ran cold. She'd survived the dinner party. She played her part perfectly. But Soo-jin's warning echoed in her mind, and she knew with terrible certainty that this was only the beginning. The next morning, Amara woke to find the mansion in chaos. Staff members were rushing through the hallways, their usual calm efficiency replaced by barely contained panic. She threw on clothes and went downstairs to find Mrs. Han directing people with sharp commands. "What's happening?" Amara asked. Mrs. Han turned, her face grave. "There was an incident last night. After you and Do-Hyun SSI left the dinner, Park Min-jun's car was ambushed on his way home. His girlfriend, the one who spoke to you, she didn't survive." Amara felt ice flood her veins. "What?" "Park is blaming Do-Hyun SSI, saying it was retaliation for her speaking to you. Do-Hyun SSI is in his office with the senior members trying to prevent a war." Mrs. Han's eyes met Amara's. "You should stay in your room, Mrs. Kang, until this is resolved." But Amara didn't go to her room. She went to Do-Hyun's office, pushing past the guard stationed outside before he could stop her. The room was full of men, all talking at once in rapid Korean, but they fell silent when she entered. Do-Hyun stood behind his desk, his expression carved from stone. "Get out," he said coldly. "This doesn't concern you." "It does if Park is using me as an excuse for war," Amara shot back. "I want to know what happened." "What happened," Jae-won said from where he leaned against the wall, "is that someone killed Park's girlfriend and made it look like our doing. Now Park wants blood, and he has the backing of 2 other clans. We're looking at a war we can't afford." "Did you do it?" Amara asked Do-Hyun directly. His eyes flashed dangerously. "I said I would handle it. I didn't say I would have her killed. I'm not stupid enough to start a war over a verbal threat." He turned to his men. "Everyone out. Now." They filed out, Jae-won giving Amara a long, unreadable look before he left. Then she and Do-Hyun were alone, the tension between them thick enough to cut. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Where should I be?" "Hiding in my room like a good little wife while you deal with a situation that exists because of me." "This situation exists because someone is trying to destabilize my position," Do-Hyun corrected. "You're just the convenient excuse. Park never liked the truce anyway. This gives him the justification he needed to break it. So what happens now?" Do-Hyun moved to the window, staring out at the grounds. "Now I prove I didn't order the hit. I find out who actually did, and I make sure everyone knows that killing you would be the last mistake they ever make." "Why do you care?" Amara moved closer, studying his profile. "You've made it very clear I'm just a means to an end. Why go to all this trouble to protect me?" He turned to face her, and for once his mask was completely gone. What she saw in his eyes made her breath catch, fury and frustration, and something that looked almost like fear. "Because you're mine," he said again, but this time it sounded different. Less like a claim of ownership, and more like a confession. "And I protect what's mine." Before Amara could respond, his phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, then his expression turned deadly. "They found the shooter," he said, ending the call. "He's one of Park's own men. Someone paid him to kill Soo-jin and frame me for it." He grabbed his jacket. "I need to go." "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. If this is about clearing your name, then I should be there. Show them I'm not some helpless victim you're using as an excuse for violence. Show them I'm your wife and I stand with you." Do-Hyun stared at her for a long moment. "You realize this could get dangerous? That if Park doesn't believe us, things could escalate fast." "I've been in danger since the moment you forced me to marry you," Amara pointed out. "At least this way I'm choosing to be there." Something that might have been respect flickered across his features. "Fine. But you stay close to me, and if I tell you to run, you run." "Understood. Understood." They took 2 cars, Do-Hyun's with Amara, followed by a second car full of his men. The drive was tense and silent. Do-Hyun's jaw clenched as he stared straight ahead. Amara could feel the violence coiled inside him, barely restrained. The meeting location was a warehouse in an industrial district, because apparently All Mafia business happened in warehouses. Park was already there with his own men, his face a mask of rage. When he saw Amara, his eyes narrowed. "You brought her." "My wife goes where I go," Do-Hyun said calmly, though his hand found Amara's and held it tightly. "And she's here to witness the truth." The shooter was bound to a chair in the center of the space, his face already showing signs of interrogation. Jae-won stood beside him, a tablet in his hands. "Tell them," Jae-won said to the man. "Tell them who paid you." The shooter spat blood onto the concrete. "Lee Sung-ho said if I killed the girl and made it look like Kang's work, he'd pay me 500 million won and get me out of the country." Park's face went white. "Sung-ho? Why would he?" "Because he wants you and me to destroy each other," Do-Hyun said. "With both our clans weakened, he could move in and take over our territories. It's a classic play, Park, and we almost fell for it." Jae-won held up the tablet, showing bank transfers, text message exchanges, all the proof they needed. Park studied it, his expression shifting from rage to calculation. "If this is true," Park said slowly, "then Sung-ho has declared war on both of us. Then perhaps," Do-Hyun said, "we should remind him why our truce existed in the first place." The two men stared at each other for a long moment, then Park nodded once. "Agreed. But this doesn't mean I like you, Kang. Or trust you. The feeling is mutual." Do-Hyun turned to leave, his hand still gripping Amara's. "But we both like Sung-ho less. That's enough for now." They were almost to the car when the first shot rang out. Do-Hyun reacted instantly, throwing Amara to the ground and covering her body with his as more shots echoed through the warehouse district. She heard shouts, the sound of returning fire, men running and screaming. "Stay down," Do-Hyun hissed in her ear, his weight pressing her into the pavement. She could feel his hard hammering against her back, could smell blood, though she didn't know if it was his or someone else's. The shooting lasted less than a minute, but felt like hours. When silence finally fell, Do-Hyun slowly raised his head, scanning their surroundings. Amara turned her face to see 3 men lying on the ground, 2 from Do-Hyun's crew, and one of Sung-ho's enforcers who'd apparently been waiting to ambush them. "Are you hurt?" Do-Hyun demanded, his hands running over her frantically, checking for injuries. I'm fine. Are you?" Amara's words cut off as she saw blood seeping through his shirt sleeve. "You're shot." "It's nothing." He tried to pull away, but she grabbed his arm, forcing him to let her look. The bullet had grazed his bicep, not deep but bleeding steadily. "That's not nothing," she said, her voice shaking with adrenaline and fear and anger. "You need medical attention. We need to get out of here first." Do-Hyun pulled her to her feet, keeping his body between her and the warehouse where more of Sung-ho's men might be hiding. His remaining guards formed a protective circle around them as they rushed to the car. Once inside, speeding away from the scene, Amara used her scarf to apply pressure to Do-Hyun's wound. His face was pale, but his expression remained calm, controlled. "You threw yourself on top of me," she said quietly. "You could have been killed. Better me than you. Why? I'm just a means to an end, remember? Just a wife you were forced to acquire for political reasons." Do-Hyun's eyes met hers, and what she saw there made her breath catch. "You stopped being just anything the moment someone tried to hurt you." The admission hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to face. Back at the mansion, Do-Hyun refused to see a doctor, instead letting Amara clean and bandage his wound in his private bathroom. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with physical attraction, her hands gentle on his skin, his eyes tracking her every movement, both of them silent. "You shouldn't have come today," he finally said. "It was reckless." "You would have gone regardless," Amara replied, taping the bandage in place. "At least this way you couldn't stop me from seeing the truth of your world." "And what truth is that?" "That it's brutal and violent, and people die for the smallest reasons." She looked up at him. "That you live every day knowing someone might try to kill you. That you threw yourself in front of bullets for a wife you claim not to want." Do-Hyun's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "I don't know what I want anymore," he admitted quietly. "Except that I know I can't let anything happen to you." "Because I'm yours," Amara said, but this time there was no bitterness in it. "Because you're mine," he agreed. Then he was kissing her, and it was nothing like the cold, possessive kiss at their wedding. This was desperate and hungry and real, his good arm wrapping around her waist and pulling her flush against him. Amara kissed him back before she could think better of it, her hands fisting in his shirt, tasting blood and danger and something that terrified her more than any threat. Want? He pulled back first, breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers. This is a mistake. Probably, Amara agreed. But neither of them moved away. I need to finish this with Sung-ho, Do-Hyun said. He tried to have you killed today. That doesn't get forgiven. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the beginning. His eyes had gone cold again, the vulnerable man from moments ago replaced by the Don. I'm going to remind everyone in Seoul why people fear the Biko clan. Over the next 3 days, Amara watched Do-Hyun orchestrate his revenge with surgical precision. Sung-ho's businesses were hit one by one, gambling dens raided, shipments intercepted, key enforcers arrested or simply disappearing. Park's clan worked with Do-Hyun's, their temporary alliance proving more effective than Sung-ho had anticipated. Amara found herself drawn deeper into Do-Hyun's world. He started including her in his strategy sessions, valuing her outside perspective. She had a knack for reading people, for seeing connections he missed because he was too close to the situation. Jae-won didn't like it. She could see the resentment in his eyes whenever she spoke up, but Do-Hyun listened to her. You're wasted as just a wife, he told her one evening as they reviewed surveillance footage in his office. You should have been running your own organization. I was supposed to be an architect, Amara reminded him. Building things, not destroying them. There's not much difference, Do-Hyun said. Both require vision, planning, understanding how pieces fit together. Except architects create. You destroy. I protect what's mine and eliminate threats. Sometimes that requires destruction. He looked at her. Does that bother you? Amara thought about it honestly. A month ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Now, after watching someone try to have her killed, after seeing the brutal reality of Do-Hyun's world, her answer was more complicated. I don't like it, she finally said. But I understand it. In your world, showing weakness gets you killed. Mercy is seen as vulnerability. You're learning. I don't want to learn. I don't want to become comfortable with violence. Too late. Do-Hyun stood and moved to where she sat, pulling her up to face him. You've already adapted. You stood in that warehouse and didn't flinch when Park's men aimed guns at you. You cleaned a bullet wound without panicking. You're tougher than you think, Amara. I'm surviving, she corrected. There's a difference. Is there? His hand came up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. Because from where I'm standing, you're doing more than surviving. You're thriving. You've commanded respect from men who thought you were just a pretty face. You've proven you're not a weakness, you're a strength. Your strength. Ours, he said, and kissed her again. This time Amara didn't pretend she was only kissing him back because she had to. She wanted this, wanted him, despite everything, despite the circumstances that had brought them together. It was stupid and dangerous and probably self-destructive, but she was tired of fighting it. They ended up in his bedroom. Not hers, his. And for the first time since their wedding, the marriage felt real. His hands on her skin, her name on his lips, the vulnerability in his eyes when he looked at her. This was supposed to be an arrangement, a transaction, but somewhere along the way it had become something else. Something that might destroy them both. Afterward, lying in his bed with his arm around her waist, Amara stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out when she'd stopped being his prisoner and started being his partner. What are you thinking? Do-Hyun asked, his voice rough. That this is insane, Amara admitted. That I should hate you. That I'm probably developing Stockholm Syndrome. Are you? Developing feelings for your captor? Amara turned to face him. Are you? Developing feelings for the wife you never wanted? Do-Hyun was quiet for a long moment. I don't know how to want something without trying to own it, he finally said. I don't know how to care about someone without turning them into a possession. It's how I was raised, how I've always operated. Then learn, Amara said. Because I won't be owned, Do-Hyun. Not by you, not by anyone. Even if I asked instead of demanded. Are you asking? His hand came up to cup her face. Stay with me. Not because you're forced to. Not because of your brother, or threats, or obligation. Stay because you want to. I can't answer that, Amara said honestly. Not yet. Not while my freedom is still conditional. What would make it unconditional? Amara thought about it. Let me finish my degree. In person on campus. Trust me enough to leave the mansion without an escort. Give me a phone I can use to call whoever I want. Prove that I'm here because I choose to be, not because I'm your prisoner. Do-Hyun was silent for so long she thought he'd refuse. Then he nodded slowly. Okay. You can finish your degree. You can have a phone. You can come and go, with security, because threats are real, but I won't stop you from having a life. His eyes held hers. But in exchange, you give us a real chance. You stop treating me like the enemy and let yourself see who I really am. And who are you really? I don't know, Do-Hyun admitted. Maybe we can figure it out together. It wasn't a declaration of love. It wasn't even a promise of happiness. But it was real and honest, and that was more than Amara had expected. Okay, she said. They sealed the agreement with another kiss, and for the first time since the warehouse, Amara felt something like hope. The war with Sung-ho ended a week later. The man himself was found dead in his office, a single bullet wound to the head, and while no one could prove Do-Hyun or Park had ordered it, everyone knew. The message was clear: betray the truce, threaten what's ours, and die. Amara should have been horrified. Instead, she felt only relief that the threat was over. She'd changed. She could feel it in how she walked through the mansion now, with confidence instead of fear. How she spoke to Do-Hyun's men, expecting respect and receiving it. How she kissed her husband, with want instead of resignation. Her husband. When had she started thinking of him that way? You're different, Mrs. Han observed one morning as she helped Amara prepare for her first day back on campus. Stronger. I had to be, Amara said. Weakness would have gotten me killed. It's more than that. You found your place here. Had she? Amara wasn't sure, but she knew she was no longer the terrified woman bound in a warehouse, agreeing to marriage to save her brother. She'd become someone else, someone who could survive in Do-Hyun's brutal world while keeping pieces of herself intact. Do-Hyun drove her to campus himself, his guards following in a separate car. He walked her to her first class, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed them. You don't have to do this, Amara said. I'll be fine. I know you will. He kissed her forehead, a gesture so casual and affectionate it made her heart ache. But I wanted to. Call me when you're done. I'll pick you up. You have a clan to run. You can't spend all day. Amara! He cupped her face in his hands. Call me. Let me take care of you even in the small ways. She nodded, throat tight with emotions she didn't have names for. The classes were harder than she remembered. She'd missed weeks of material, and her mind kept wandering to warehouse shootings and dinner parties with killers. But she focused, determined to reclaim this piece of her old life. When Do-Hyun picked her up that evening, he asked about her day like a normal husband, and she told him about her assignments like a normal wife, and they drove home to the mansion that had somehow become theirs instead of just his. I got something for you, Do-Hyun said when they arrived. He led her to the library where a brand-new drafting table had been set up, complete with professional supplies. For your architecture work. I know the mansion is. He gestured vaguely. Cold. Impersonal. I thought you might want to design something warmer. Amara stared at the setup, tears prickling her eyes. It was thoughtful in a way she never expected from him. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me yet. I'm expecting you to redesign parts of this place. Make it less like a fortress and more like a home. Our home. Do-Hyun pulled her into his arms. Our home, he agreed. That night, as they lay tangled together in their bed, Amara realized the terrible truth. She was falling in love with her captor, her forced husband, the man who'd ruined her life and somehow given her a new one. And the most terrifying part, she thought he might be falling too. 3 months into their new normal, Amara had almost convinced herself that happiness was possible. She'd finished her semester with honors, spent her days designing renovations for the mansion, her nights tangled with Do-Hyun in sheets that no longer felt like a prison. He kept his promises. She had freedom, autonomy, a phone she could use without surveillance. The marriage that started as a cage had transformed into something that almost resembled a real partnership. Almost. The call came on a Tuesday morning while Do-Hyun was in a meeting with his accountants. Amara's new phone, a gift from Do-Hyun, expensive and unrestricted, rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. Amara! The voice on the other end made her blood freeze. It's Chitty, her brother. The brother who was supposed to be in Lagos, living the new life Do-Hyun had paid for with her freedom. The brother she wasn't allowed to contact, whose safety depended on him staying far away from Korea. You can't be calling me, Amara whispered, moving to a corner of the library where no one could overhear. Do-Hyun will. Do-Hyun already knows I'm here. Chitty's voice was hard, angry. I'm at a hotel in Gangnam. I need to see you. There are things you need to know about your husband. About why he really married you. Chitty, you need to leave Korea immediately. If he finds out, he already found me. Sent his men to my hotel this morning. Told me I had 24 hours to leave, or I'd disappear. Chitty paused. But I'm not leaving until you know the truth. Meet me. Please, Amara. You deserve to know what you've gotten yourself into. Every instinct screamed this was a trap, a manipulation. But this was her brother. The man who'd raised her, protected her, made one terrible mistake that had cost them everything. She couldn't just ignore him. Where? She asked. Chitty gave her an address, a cafe in a busy shopping district. Public. Safe. 2 hours. Come alone, or I'll assume you're too far gone to save. He hung up before she could respond. Amara stood in the library, phone clutched in her hand, mind racing. She should tell Do-Hyun immediately. They'd built their relationship on honesty these past months, on choosing to trust each other despite the brutal circumstances of their beginning. But something in Chitty's voice, desperation mixed with conviction, made her hesitate. What truth could be so terrible that her brother would risk his life to tell her? She found Do-Hyun in his office, ending his meeting early when he saw her face. What's wrong? He crossed to her immediately, hands on her shoulders, scanning her for threats. Chitty called. He's in Seoul. Do-Hyun's expression went absolutely still, cold. I know. You know. You knew he was here and didn't tell me. I was handling it. He moved back to his desk, pouring himself a drink despite the early hour. He showed up yesterday, making threats, demanding to see you. I told him he had 24 hours to leave Korea and never come back. He said he has information about you. About why you really married me. Amara watched Do-Hyun's face carefully. He said I deserve to know the truth. There is no truth he could tell you that matters. Do-Hyun's voice was flat, final. Your brother is a gambler, a thief, and a liar. He'll say anything to drive a wedge between us, to get you away from me so he can use you again. Don't let him manipulate you. Then tell me yourself. Amara crossed her arms. If there's nothing to hide, tell me why you really needed a wife. You said it was for political reasons, for appearances, but you've never explained what that actually means. Do-Hyun was silent for a long moment, his jaw clenched. It's complicated. So uncomplicated. Amara! Do-Hyun! She moved closer, forcing him to look at her. We've spent 3 months building something real. Don't destroy it now by keeping secrets. He stared at her, conflict warring in his eyes. Then he drained his drink and set the glass down with careful precision. My father, he began slowly, died when I was 24. Left me control of the clan, but there were conditions in his will. One of them was that I had to be married by the time I turned 28, or control would pass to my cousin. J1, Amara breathed. J1. Do-Hyun nodded. My father didn't trust him, knew he was ambitious and ruthless without the strategic thinking to back it up. But he also didn't trust me alone. Thought marriage would stabilize me, make me think about legacy instead of just power. He laughed bitterly. I had 3 months until my 20th birthday when your brother stole from us. 3 months to find a wife or lose everything. Amara processed this, pieces clicking into place. So you married me because I was convenient, available, controllable. At first, yes. Do-Hyun met her eyes. I needed a wife. You needed your brother to live. It was a transaction. But Amara, whatever it started as, it's not that anymore. You know it's not. Is there more? She asked quietly. Is there something else you're not telling me? The pause before he answered told her everything. No. He was lying. She could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the way he wouldn't quite hold her gaze. After 3 months of learning to read him, of peeling back his layers, she knew when he was hiding something. "I need to go out," Amara said. "Clear my head. I'll have guards." "No." She grabbed her bag, heading for the door. "I need to be alone. Just for a few hours. Amara, your brother is dangerous. If he contacts you again—" "He won't." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. "I'll be back before dinner." She left before he could stop her, before she could see the concern and suspicion warring in his expression. The cafe was exactly as Chitty had described, busy, loud, anonymous. She found him in a corner booth, looking older than she remembered, thinner. When he saw her, his face crumpled with relief and grief. "Amara!" He stood, reaching for her, but she held up a hand. "Talk! You have 30 minutes before I leave." Chitty gestured for her to sit, then pulled out a folder stuffed with documents. "I've spent the last 3 months investigating Do-Hyun Kang, calling in every favor I had left, paying people to dig into his past. And I found something you need to know. Chitty, if this is about his business, about the clan, I already know what he does. I'm not naive. It's not about the clan." Chitty pushed the folder across the table. "It's about your parents." Amara's breath caught. "What?" "Your parents didn't die in a random car accident, Amara. They were killed. Murdered." Chitty's hands were shaking. "And the man who ordered it was Do-Hyun's father." The cafe sounds faded to white noise. Amara stared at her brother, certain she'd misheard. "That's impossible. My parents died in Lagos. Do-Hyun's family is here in Seoul. They never even met." "Open the folder." With numb fingers, Amara opened it. Inside were police reports, autopsy documents, photographs that made her stomach turn. Her parents' car, crushed and burned. But also bank transfers, meeting logs, a contract her father had apparently signed with the Biko clan. "Dad was working with them," Chitty said quietly, "laundering money through a shipping company. But he tried to get out, threatened to go to the authorities when he realized what he'd gotten into. So they killed him, killed both of them, and made it look like an accident." "No." Amara pushed the folder away. "No, this is fake. You're lying because you want me away from Do-Hyun." "I'm lying." Chitty's voice rose. "Look at the dates, Amara. Look at the signatures. Do-Hyun's father ordered the hit. And Do-Hyun," he pulled out another document. "Do-Hyun knew. He was 20 at the time, already involved in the clan. There are records of him being in Lagos that week. He was there, Amara. He was there when they died." Amara's vision blurred. She forced herself to look at the document, a passport stamp, an airline ticket, hotel records. Do-Hyun Kang, age 20, Lagos, Nigeria. 2 days before her parents died. "He couldn't have known," she whispered. "He said he'd never met them. He said. He lied." Chitty reached across the table, gripping her hand. "Everything he told you was a lie. He didn't marry you because you were convenient. He married you because he knew who you were, knew what his family did to yours. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's some twisted sense of ownership over your life. But Amara, he knew. And he never told you." Amara stood on shaky legs, the cafe spinning around her. "I need to go." "Amara, wait." "I need to go." She backed away, clutching the folder. I need to. She didn't finish the sentence. She just ran. The drive back to the mansion passed in a blur. Amara's mind was a storm of memories, recontextualizing everything through this new, horrible lens. Do-Hyun's face when he first saw her in the warehouse. Had that been recognition? All his talk about protection, about not letting anyone hurt her, was it guilt? The way he'd given her freedom, tried to make amends, reparations for a sin he'd never confessed? She found him in his office, exactly where she'd left him. He looked up when she entered, his expression shifting from relief to concern when he saw her face. "Amara, what?" She threw the folder on his desk, paper scattering across the polished surface. "Tell me it's not true." Do-Hyun's face went absolutely still. He looked at the documents, the photographs, and something in him seemed to die. "Tell me you didn't know my parents," Amara demanded, her voice breaking. "Tell me your father didn't have them killed. Tell me you weren't in Lagos when they died. Tell me this is all lies." "I can't." His voice was barely audible. The admission hit her like a physical blow. She staggered back, hand over her mouth, trying not to scream. "Your father did business with my father," Do-Hyun said quietly, each word clearly causing him pain. "Shipping routes, money laundering. When he tried to get out, threatened to expose us, my father ordered the hit. I was 20, barely involved in the clan yet, but he wanted me there. Wanted me to see what happened to people who betrayed us." He looked at her, and his eyes were devastated. "I watched them sabotage your parents' car, Amara. I stood there and did nothing while my father's men murdered innocent people. And I've lived with that guilt every day since. You knew." Amara's voice was hollow. "When you saw me in that warehouse, when you offered marriage, you knew who I was. Yes, everything was a lie. Everything." She laughed, a broken sound. "The forced marriage, the protection, giving me freedom, it was all guilt. You didn't fall for me. You just couldn't live with what your family did to mine, so you tried to make it right by making me your wife." "That's not." Do-Hyun moved toward her and she flinched back. "Don't touch me." Her voice was ice. "Don't ever touch me again. Amara, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you let my parents die. That you married me knowing you had their blood on your hands. That every word, every kiss, every moment between us was built on the worst lie imaginable." Tears were streaming down her face now, hot and furious. "You didn't just take my freedom, Do-Hyun. You took everything. My past, my truth, my ability to trust anything about us. I tried to tell you," he said desperately. "So many times I tried, but I was afraid. Afraid you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me now. Afraid I'd lose you. You never had me." Amara screamed. "How could you have me when you never gave me the truth? When you never gave me a choice?" "You're right." Do-Hyun's voice broke. "You're absolutely right. I'm a coward and a liar, and I don't deserve your forgiveness. But Amara, please understand. I fell in love with you. Somewhere between the forced vows and the danger and learning who you really are, I fell in love. And I know that doesn't erase what I did, doesn't make anything right, but it's the truth. I don't believe you." Amara backed toward the door. "I don't believe anything you say anymore." "Then believe this." Do-Hyun pulled something from his desk drawer, a small leather notebook, worn and old. "This is my journal from that time. Read it. See what I really thought, really felt. Then decide if I'm lying about loving you." Amara took the journal because she didn't know what else to do. Then she turned and walked out, leaving Do-Hyun standing alone in his office, looking like a man watching his entire world collapse. She locked herself in her room, the room that had been hers before it became theirs, and read. The journal was devastating. Page after page of a 20-year-old Do-Hyun grappling with what he'd witnessed, with the monster his father was becoming, with his own complicity in evil. Entries about nightmares, about seeing the Chakuma couple's faces in every crowd, about drowning in guilt. And then, 8 years later, an entry dated the day after he'd first seen Amara in the warehouse. "I saw her today. Amara Chakuma, the daughter of the people my father murdered. She was bound in my warehouse, terrified but defiant, and I saw her mother's eyes looking back at me. This is my punishment, delivered by fate. The universe giving me a chance at redemption or damnation, I don't know which. I told her I'd marry her. Told myself it was practical, necessary. But the truth is darker. I need her. Need to protect her, possess her, make sure nothing like what happened to her parents ever happens to her. It's selfish. It's wrong. But I can't let her go." The entries continued through their marriage. His confusion at her strength. His growing obsession. His terror when she was threatened. And then, from 2 months ago, "I'm in love with her. Completely, irrevocably in love. And she can never know the truth about how we're connected. If she knew, she'd hate me. She'd leave. And I can't survive that. I know keeping the secret makes me a coward. I know it means everything between us is built on lies. But I'm selfish enough to take whatever time I can have with her before the truth destroys us. God help me, I'm not strong enough to let her go." Amara closed the journal, tears dripping onto the worn leather cover. He loved her. Truly, desperately loved her. But love built on lies wasn't love, it was obsession, possession dressed up as devotion. A knock on her door made her look up. Mrs. Han's voice came through, gentle and concerned. "Mrs. Kang? May I come in?" Amara opened the door. Mrs. Han took one look at her tear-stained face and immediately entered, closing the door behind her. "You know," Amara said flatly. "I suspected." Mrs. Han guided her to sit on the bed. "I've worked for the Kang family for 30 years. I was there when Do-Hyun returned from Lagos, when he started having nightmares he wouldn't explain. When he saw you that first day in the warehouse, I saw his face. I knew there was history, even if I didn't know the details. He let my parents die. He was a child under his father's control," Mrs. Han said quietly. "That doesn't excuse it, but it does explain it. He lied to me for months. Yes, and that is unforgivable." Mrs. Han took Amara's hand. "But I've watched him with you these past months. I've seen him become someone different. Less monster, more man. You changed him, Amara. That doesn't mean you owe him forgiveness, but it does mean the love is real." "How can I forgive this?" Amara whispered. "How can I look at him and not see my parents' murderer?" "I don't know if you can," Mrs. Han admitted. "That's a decision only you can make. But I do know this. Do-Hyun Kang would die for you. He's proved it. The question is whether that's enough." After Mrs. Han left, Amara sat in her room for hours, the journal in her lap, her mind a battlefield. She could leave, take the phone Do-Hyun gave her, the freedom he'd granted, and disappear. Start over somewhere he'd never find her. But the thought of leaving made her chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with loss. She'd fallen in love with him too. Despite everything, despite the lies and the brutal truth, she'd fallen in love with the man who'd thrown himself in front of bullets for her, who'd given her freedom when he could have kept her caged, who looked at her like she was his entire world. How did you reconcile love with unforgivable sin? The answer came at dawn, when she finally left her room and went to find Do-Hyun. He was in his office, still fully clothed, looking like he hadn't slept. When he saw her, he stood slowly, carefully, like she was a wild animal he might spook. "I read your journal," Amara said. "Then you know I'm everything you think I am." His voice was hollow. "A coward, a liar, a man who doesn't deserve you. You're right. You don't deserve me." Amara moved closer. "You're also right that you love me. I felt it in your words, in how you've treated me these past months." "Amara, I don't know if I can forgive you," she continued. "I don't know if what we have can survive this. But I know I love you. Against every rational thought, every ounce of self-preservation, I love you." She stopped in front of him, looking up into his devastated eyes. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything. Every detail about my parents, about that night, about why your father targeted them. No more secrets, no more lies. And then I'm going to decide if love is enough." Do-Hyun nodded, a broken man grasping at one final chance. Okay. They talked for hours. Do-Hyun laid bare every ugly detail, how his father had discovered Amara's father's crisis of conscience, how he'd ordered the hit, how Do-Hyun had been forced to watch as a lesson in what the clan demanded, how he'd vomited afterward, how he'd tried to refuse his father and been beaten for his weakness, how he'd carried the guilt like a weight ever since. "I could have stopped it," Do-Hyun said, his voice raw. "I was young and scared, but I could have warned them, called the police, done something. Instead, I stood by and let it happen. That makes me as guilty as the men who actually killed them." "Yes," Amara agreed. "It does." The admission seemed to break something in him. He dropped his face into his hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Amara watched him cry for the first time, this powerful, dangerous man reduced to his shame and guilt. And she made her choice. "I can't forgive you," she said quietly. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did, what you didn't do, cost me my parents. Cost me and Chitty our entire lives. That's not something you get to erase with love or good intentions." Do-Hyun nodded, not looking up. "But," Amara continued, and his head snapped up, "I can try. I can try to separate the 20-year-old boy under his father's control from the 28-year-old man who threw himself in front of bullets for me. I can try to build something new from the ashes of what we've destroyed. If you can accept that it might never work, that I might wake up one day and realize I can't do this, then we can try." "You're staying." Do-Hyun's voice was disbelieving. "I'm choosing to stay. There's a difference. Amara reached out and took his hand. I'm choosing you, even knowing everything. But Do-Hyun, if you ever lie to me again, if you ever keep another secret, we're done. No second chances. No explanations. Done. I understand. He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles with something like reverence. I'll spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice. You'll spend the rest of your life earning what you almost destroyed, Amara corrected. And we'll see if love is enough to build on ruins. It wasn't easy. The next months were painful, full of arguments and tears and moments when Amara looked at Do-Hyun and saw her parents' graves instead of his face. But slowly, agonizingly, they rebuilt. Do-Hyun established a foundation in her parents' names, funneling money into Nigerian communities, into architecture scholarships for students like Amara. He found Chitty and, instead of threatening him, offered him a real job, legitimate, clean, managing one of the clan's legal businesses. He went to therapy, something he'd scorned before, working through his guilt and his father's abuse. And Amara learned that forgiveness wasn't a moment but a process. Every day, she chose him again. Every day, she looked at the man he was becoming instead of the boy he'd been. Every day, she let love be slightly bigger than hate. Jae-won tried to use the revelation to destabilize Do-Hyun's position, to paint him as weak for not silencing Amara. But Do-Hyun faced the clan leadership directly, admitted his father's sins and his own complicity, and dared anyone to challenge him. His honesty, his refusal to hide behind power, earned him a different kind of respect. You're changing this world, Amara told him one evening as they reviewed foundation applications. Making it less brutal. You're changing it, Do-Hyun corrected. I'm just trying to be worthy of you. Then keep trying, she said and kissed him. The marriage that began in a warehouse with threats and tears became something neither of them expected, a genuine partnership forged in trauma and tempered in truth. They fought, they loved, they built something new from broken pieces. And when Amara walked across the stage to receive her architecture degree, Do-Hyun was in the audience cheering louder than anyone, pride and love written across his face. I'm proud of you, he said afterward, pulling her into his arms. I know, Amara replied. But Do-Hyun, I'm proud of us. 2 years after that terrible day in the warehouse, Amara stood in the mansion's garden, the garden she designed, full of Nigerian flowers and Korean maples growing together, and watched the sunset paint Seoul gold. Do-Hyun came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. What are you thinking? He asked. That we should plant more jasmine next spring, Amara said. My mother loved jasmine. Then we'll plant an entire field of it. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Whatever you want. I want the truth, Amara said, turning in his arms to face him. Always, even when it hurts. Always, Do-Hyun promised. Even when it destroys me. It won't destroy you. Amara cupped his face in her hands. We've already been destroyed and rebuilt. What we have now is stronger than either of us alone. I love you, he said, and it sounded like prayer and confession and gratitude all at once. I know, Amara replied. I love you too. Despite everything. Because of everything. They kissed as the sun set on Seoul. 2 people who'd found each other in the darkest possible way and somehow, impossibly, made it work. The blood debt had been paid, not in violence or revenge, but in truth, in choosing each other every day despite their scars, in building a love that acknowledged the past without being destroyed by it. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, messy, complicated love. And for Amara and Do-Hyun, that was enough. Epilogue 1 year later. Amara sat at her drafting table, reviewing plans for the new community center the foundation was building in Lagos, a center that would bear her parents' names and offer free education to children who'd lost their families. Do-Hyun had insisted on funding the entire project, his way of making amends to the city where he'd committed his worst sin. The door opened and Do-Hyun entered, loosening his tie after a long day. How was the meeting? Amara asked, not looking up from her designs. Jae-won is still pushing back on going completely legitimate, but the rest of the council is with me. He moved behind her, looking over her shoulder at the plans. This is beautiful. It's necessary, Amara corrected. Beauty is secondary. That's where you're wrong. Do-Hyun turned her chair to face him. Beauty is what makes the necessary worth doing. You taught me that. Amara smiled, touching his face gently. You're getting soft in your old age, Mr. Kang. Only for you, Mrs. Kang. He pulled her up and into his arms. Only for you. They danced without music in her studio, two people who'd found salvation in each other despite, or perhaps because of, their darkest moments. Outside, Seoul glittered with evening lights, and somewhere in the city, other stories were beginning, other lives intersecting in ways that would change everything. But for Amara and Do-Hyun, this moment was enough. This love, born in violence and lies but nurtured with brutal honesty and daily choice, was enough. They'd paid their debts in full. Now they were just living, loving, being. And that was the greatest victory of all. The end. If you made it to the end of Amara and Do-Hyun's journey, drop a comment below telling me what you thought. Did they deserve their happy ending? Could you forgive what Do-Hyun did? And don't forget to subscribe, because there are more dark romance stories coming that will break your heart and put it back together. Hit that like button if the story destroyed you in the best way possible. Thank you for being here for every chapter, every twist, every moment. This is just the beginning. See you in the next story.